Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Phone Booth Fighting. This one, a Sunday morning UFC 259 recap edition. And there's Frank Mir over there to the right of me on the screen. Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Good, man.
UFC 259 took place here in Las Vegas tonight, or last night, rather. It's weird. I'm still getting used to it. I was thinking how many years it had been, pretty much years since, pre-pandemic, that I missed a fight in Las Vegas. And I've missed those for a number of reasons. One, capacity is more limited because they're having them over at the Performance Institute and all that for media members, but of course also being careful and cautious of the COVID situation and all that. So it's really weird. I mean, the last live fight I saw here in Vegas, I guess was Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I guess that was the last one. So anyway, it's weird. It's weird how fast in some ways a year can go by. So looking forward to getting there cage side to see fights again. Is it weird to you to watch it on the I know we've been doing this a year now, but is it still weird to you? You've been a part of so many big fights and big arenas and all that. I mean, could you imagine any of your title challenges or defenses or anything like that being in what kind of feels like the Ultimate Fighter gym,
No, it's even still weird for me to watch it on camera, over the, on television, to see to see a fight like Peter Yan, and going on, and the atmosphere to be as just quiet and small as it is there, just is still strange for me.
Yeah, it's for a long time. It's what I used to tell people who had never attended an Ultimate Fighter taping was the coolest part of it, actually, is because when you go to see the Ultimate Fighter, you're essentially it's like you're in a gym. I mean, it's that kind of vibe, right? Like it's sparring day in a gym, except it's not sparring. It's 100% full on fighting, which is always so weird to me because anybody who's been around sparring, even when sparring gets hard, it's still not a full on fight. And the feel of being in that Ultimate Fighter gym was so unique to me in that way, because you're like, damn, you're hearing the sounds, you're hearing 100% of the force and the effort and all that you normally wouldn't hear because you're in an arena with 10,000 plus people. So that part of it is very unusual.
Yeah. I'm still not used to it. I think as a competitor, I think it's probably, it probably drives up your adrenaline less to be in that situation. Mm-hmm. I know right now it's actually to our advantage that Bella started her first two fights in an area where there wasn't an arena, as far as a crowd. So I think it could be helpful, especially from a cornerman's point of view. You can really communicate with the fighter much better.
Yeah, you can.
Didn't work out so well last night, but in most cases, it's a positive thing.
You know what? It's funny. Before we get to that, you're talking about Peter Yan and the Piotr, I should say. I believe it's how I pronounce his name, Piotr Yan, and Aljamain Sterling controversy with the outcome of that fight. We'll be talking about that in a second. But did you also happen to hear what happened with Tim Elliott in his fight?
No, I didn't catch it.
Communication. So Tim Elliott actually got himself on TMZ today because of this. So Tim Elliott is fighting Jordan Espinosa and dominated him beginning to end. 3-round shutout, 30-27 on two of the cards and 30-25 on the other one. But while they're in the middle of the fight, Tim Elliott is saying to Jordan Espinosa, "So are you a woman beater? You like to beat your girlfriend? She sent me pictures and messages of choke marks on her neck and scratches and black eye or whatever." He's saying all this to him during the fight. And Espinosa is saying, "Oh, you don't know the whole story." And he's like, "Well, tell me the whole story." And Tim Elliott was asked about it in the post-fight press conference, and he said, "I just meant for that to be a conversation between us. I wouldn't, I didn't say anything in the press conferences leading up to it. I wouldn't say anything in the post fight, but that is the kind of thing. I mean, you and I've talked before about how there are all these little behind the scenes stories about how fighters can, maybe they have some words with each other that you only hear in each other's ears or something like that, but not anymore. This is like fighting in a library.
Absolutely. And to that point, even, where it is detrimental and positive, it's just different, right? Max from the gym, Roscoff, the conversation he had for his debut in the UFC fight. Had that been any other time besides now, currently with with COVID, the fans at home wouldn't have been privy to that conversation. It's probably happened hundreds of times before between fighters and corners, struggling mentally in a fight, but because the silence of the arena, it was on full display for everybody to hear, and that really, really was a major setback for him mentally.
It's a good point. I've even heard commentators talk about how now let's say they're more careful about what they say. It's not about offending the fighter, but it's more about not coming across like they're coaching, especially if they're making a point where they're focusing on maybe what this particular fighter needs to do to turn the tide of a fight or find a submission or something like that. And they're concerned about sort of trying to maintain objectivity. So they're actually speaking a little lower than they normally would.
Hey, speaking, I know we're going to go through the fights.
Yeah.
It's probably the three main ones, right? But just why it's on my head, and we can come back to it. I normally don't listen to the commentary on fights. I find it distracting, most of the time, to say the least. But I was at, a friend's house last night, and so they had the, obviously the audio turned up and everybody's listening. The Izzy fight with Blachowicz, I was sitting there going, wow, like, I really don't think we're watching the same fight that the commentators were watching. If you would have had them score the fight, I think they had, basically Izzy running away with it. I gave Izzy one round. I thought he won one, maybe the third round. I had Blachowicz winning rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5. But if you would listen to the commentators, if you closed your eyes, you thought Blachowicz was just getting his ass handed to him.
Well, okay. Well, let's start there. That was the main event, of course, and it was one of those rare times where two champions meet, and one of them is trying to become a double champ. That is Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champ, was taking on Jan Blachowicz for his light heavyweight title. Let me just ask you first, what did you think about this fight going into it? It's not the first time we've seen somebody go up in weight class to challenge for another title and all that sort of thing. But I'll tell you that Izzy was not, he's supremely skilled, but because of his body structure, just a long, lanky fighter, he wasn't the first guy I thought of previous to this as far as, he should definitely, move up and without putting on any appreciable muscle, let's say, without going through a more long-range plan for that, and just start challenging immediately at the next weight class up, especially already being a middleweight, and now you're moving up to light heavyweight. The John Jones play, this has been coming with John Jones for quite a while. What do you think about that? That just wasn't my first thought of something that should happen before it did.
Honestly, I really, that was a fight I beforehand, I would be lying to you if I told you I thought, Blachowicz was going to run away with it. I thought Adesanya had, because of his speed and mobility, going up in a weight class, possessing those skills only get amplified as you go up. And so, if that's what makes you good at middleweight, well, it's only going to make you great at light heavyweight. If you're a guy who, on the flip side, so people can understand my point more, if you're a guy who physically dominates guys in your weight class, because you're strong and you grab them and you tear them down and you're on top of them, well, that might not work out when you start moving up weight classes. You're maybe not a candidate for going up a weight class, because now the guys that you're going to be fighting are going to be bigger and stronger, and that was your edge at your weight class. The fact that his edge is speed, I thought that was going to make an interesting fight. I was a little worried that it'd be a bit of a lackluster fight, 5 rounds of just a lot of just angling and pitter patter and just kind of a snooze fest. But I thought Blachowicz did a phenomenal job of shutting down Izzy's kicks. Izzy couldn't throw low kicks and knock him off balance. Did not disrupt him. He was able to block all the high kicks, and really that's one of Izzy's Adesanya's best weapons is his legs. And then as far as hands and significant strikes, Blachowicz knocked Adesanya's head back several times. He landed by far the more significant strikes that were like, ooh, that was a great shot. Ooh, that was a great shot. Adesanya didn't, and then being able to mix in the takedowns later in the fight, around 4 and 5 and just smothering him and making him carry his weight, I thought was very smart. He didn't, extend himself out too early on, stayed conservative, and I thought Blachowicz clearly won the fight. I didn't even think it was, I guess you could say it's close because Blachowicz didn't run away with it. It wasn't like he was knocking Adesanya out, but I thought it was a pretty comfortable, controlled. As I was watching the fight, I'm like, well, if you're a Blachowicz fan, he has this in the bag. It's completely in control. After I watched the first round, I'm like, oh, he's not being mystified by any of the kicks. They're not, especially once he shut down the low kick blocking with the shin and he kept his stance, narrow because he didn't have to worry about being taken down. He just purely worked defensive kickboxing, which that's something that maybe people in the future when they fight Adesanya are going to have to look at and go, hey, he only strikes with you. You're never going to have to worry about a level change and him taking you down and scoring. So now you can, change your stance to defend just kicks and punches. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, I had thought going into this fight that, first of all, I too was giving credence to the speed kills old adage. And so I thought that was really going to benefit Adesanya. I actually thought I thought he could win a boring fight. And which I think you just alluded to as well. So in that sense, the fight did not go the way that I thought it would. But I did think it was going to a decision, and I thought that Adesanya would just try to stay on the perimeter and be a sniper. Because I also thought that if you think about the way that Adesanya beat Yoel Romero, Yoel Romero obviously a much better pure wrestler, but same theory in the sense that Adesanya did not mind winning a boring fight on the biggest stage. Like he was completely comfortable with that. And I was at that fight too. In fact, I think that might actually be the very, very last fight I saw. If I'm not mistaken, that was that was the main event, and the co-main was Joanna and Weili Zhang, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, but that one was a tough one to watch. And so I thought, well, he probably has a formula for victory in that scenario. So on the one hand, definitely wrong about the fact that it wasn't very interesting to watch. And I also think there's a lot of credit that should go to Jan Blachowicz in that regard for forcing this fight to be as interesting as it was. And then, yeah, to your point, when you are able to, how many times in a mixed martial arts fight, sure, guys come in as, ground specialists or power punchers or whatever, but how many times can you really just completely discount one of the elements of it? Realistically, how many times can you just say, well, of course he's not taking you down? To be able to just 100% purely say that, that didn't come along all that often. So yeah, you're right. Once you can say that, the freedom of that, of not only what you can do, but also what you can do more often, because there's other things you're not having to do to prepare for that, speaks volumes.
Yeah, in fact, actually, that's one thing. My only coaching advice if I would have been in Blachowicz's corner that I would have yelled more of, is that every time Izzy, when he throws a jab, he really steps in hard because he's quick and powerful, and he throws that, it really blades his body sideways. I was like, man, Blachowicz, your legs are so narrow so that you can pick your knees up easily and block kicks. Throw a low calf kick. Throw a kick the minute you feel like he's coming with a punch. Tie that into your reaction. When you're slipping or you're parrying, chop at the same time, because Adesanya's stance when he lands that strike is so wide, he can't get his foot A out of the way, or B, can't really turn and pivot his shin to be able to take the kick anywhere else besides on the back of the leg.
Yeah. Well, a great night for Jan Blachowicz, and Adesanya said in the post-fight press conference he goes back down. He'll go back to defending the middleweight title, but he does want to come back up at light heavyweight at some point, and I think he'll definitely have future fights there and future success as well. So I don't know. I didn't think anybody stock. I definitely don't think anybody stock dropped in this fight. If anything, I think it was just validation for Jan Blachowicz as a newer champion and, somebody who hasn't been on that main event stage as much up to this point. So I think his stock probably goes up the farthest, really, when you take into consideration of the tiers that everyone's on. I mean, probably just as much as anybody's over the night. Any last thoughts on this fight before we talk about the co-main?
No, I thought it was a great fight. I thought, I thought Adesanya did what he possibly could try to do. Just Blachowicz had a great game plan and knew what to do to shut down Adesanya's speed and low kicks, and then mixed in the wrestling and really, showcased the lack of grappling that Adesanya has.
The co-main event was another champ, Amanda Nunez, who holds the women's featherweight and bantamweight title, defending her featherweight title at 145 pounds against Australian Megan Anderson. Nunez submits Anderson with an armbar 2 minutes and 3 seconds into the first round. So this fight did go exactly how I thought it was going to. And it's just because of Amanda Nunez. I mean, I don't think it rises to the level of being disrespectful. And I don't ever want to just be so dismissive of a fighter's chances. But this isn't about Megan Anderson. This is just about Amanda Nunez. This is about the greatest women's MMA fighter in the history of the sport. And not only so far, yes, exactly. Yeah. So for the Mir household may have something to say about that. But, you think about in 2 minutes being able to, first of all, I'll showcase my overwhelming power for a minute, and then I'll show off my ground skills for the next minute. Fight's only going to last 2 minutes. How many people can show how well-rounded they are in 2 minutes? I guess that's my point. Pretty impressive.
It is. I mean, the minute they start moving around and Megan threw a strike, and then you see Amanda throw a strike, it becomes evident that they're not in the same department as far as skills, athletically, physically. And so, that fight, it went exactly how I thought it was going to go. I thought, in fact, I was sitting there and the guys were, what's going to happen? Well, I think Amanda's going to drop her with an overhand right when she throws her jab, because she's kind of long and drops her hand. And then I think then Amanda will rush her, hit her with a few strikes, and then submit her. And then it played out exactly as we called it.
Yeah. And even in the submission had what I guess started out to be like an inverted triangle, and then she armbarred her out of that, right? I mean, she had the makings of one submission before she ended up finishing the fight with the other. What do you think about this women's featherweight division? Here's why I ask. I was having this conversation with the MMA Junkie guys when we were doing our thing earlier this week, and they were saying how they generally don't like the champ thing. They just don't like it's an accomplishment, but then it's going to hold up 2 titles, and somebody's got to bounce back and forth and figure out what they're going to do, and maybe give up one title and keep the other, or maybe they get stripped and all this kind of thing. Most of the time I get that. This is an unusual scenario, though, because Amanda Nunez can capably bounce back and forth to defend both titles. She's unquestionably dominant in both divisions. But with this featherweight title, there are so few women in it, because you're competing at 145 pounds, that it's kind of like I don't know. I guess in my mind, I kind of think of it as like a cameo division for her. Like, she's going to do a lot of work in the bantamweight division, but periodically she can just pop up and do a featherweight, not have to, cut weight and that kind of thing, and then just defend that title as well. And it's easy to say, oh, okay, well, should this title just go away because it does seem like it's kind of made for one person? Well, it may be that way now, but originally, I mean, you wouldn't have had Chris Cyborg in UFC if you didn't have that featherweight title. You have had other women who were capable of fighting at featherweight. Jermaine Durandamy, Holly Holm, Megan Anderson this time around. I mean, she needs that weight class. So I don't mind it. I mean, I think it served a good purpose. I could see where it will be tough to sustain because women's featherweight fighters just aren't going to come along as often. But I actually do think I'm comfortable for as long as Amanda Nunez's career goes on. Now, when she's done, then I don't know. Maybe you have to recalibrate and see what you've got. But at this point, let's say she fights another couple of years, something like that, I'm completely fine with it because it maintains that division for women who need to have it because they can't get to 135 pounds. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree with you. I think right now it works out just because the women's MMA sport is still developing and it doesn't have the same timeline as the male side. So that being said, it's building up. But I mean, if you look at the different sports that, like, for example, wrestling, where we draw a lot of our MMA fighters on the men's side, female wrestling is exploding right now. So I feel like you're going to have more depth coming in the next 5 and 10 years in that weight class of a ton more girls at 145. But getting rid of it, I mean, you still have girls on other areas like, Kayla Harris, who's, has been going down featherweight there in the PFL. And I mean, look, if we didn't have the 45-pound weight class, we wouldn't have Cyborg. And also, too, I mean, Gina Carano wouldn't have had a career. And, we wouldn't know who she is besides her kickboxing career because of that.
Yeah. It's something that I don't know. Once Amanda Nunez isn't in the picture, what becomes of the featherweight division, time will tell. But for right now, she does seem to be that one champion that can very comfortably move from one division to the other.
If she was holding it up and there was 4 or 5 girls all vying, and fighting each other and complaining that, but I think because of the lack of depth right now, it makes perfect sense to me. I think let the girls, fight it out, and once a year, whoever comes to the top of the food chain of the featherweight class, she can jump up there and establish her dominance or pass it on. Yeah.
And also credit to Amanda Nunez for debunking my theory that children ruin people because she's had a kid and didn't affect her performance whatsoever. We were throwing around a fun hypothetical, Frank. I'll put you on the spot here. Again, when I was talking to George and Goes over at MMA Junkie this week, I said, okay, you have a favorite fighter, right? You're a fighter, even if it's not like your personal favorite. This is just a fighter, can't miss fighter that you bet on every time. Amanda Nunez, for example, is a good one, but just a hypothetical fighter in your mind. Okay. This is a fighter you're 100% going to back. Boy, you bet the farm on this guy or girl, you can't miss on him. But in the 3 months prior to the big fight, this hypothetical fight we're talking about, and all the way up to it. So they're going to have this distraction for the immediate 3 months before their fight. You're going to have to pick one of these 3 distractions. Okay. Which one do you go with? A baby, a movie, or a rap album? They're going to do one of them.
Well, I really don't know what it's like to do a movie or a rap album.
You've done movies.
I've been on sets here and there. I mean, personally, I've had babies before fights. So my children. So I think the baby's not that big of a deal as far as a distraction, as long as you have a partner who is also focused and dedicated to helping out. I think actually it can be a very positive thing. Sometimes it kind of refocuses you, and it did for me. And it gives you a reprieve, in between training sessions to hang out with your child and see what you're able to establish and build for them. So I picked the baby.
No. Okay. So you're saying that one's the least. Yes. Okay. I got you.
I think so too. Because also too, it's the healthiest of all the forms, right?
Yeah.
You're not necessarily drinking alcohol or hanging out late at night because of a baby. right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, on the movie set, people want to hang out afterwards. You know, rap videos, I can only imagine. You know what I mean? The distractions that actually could really derail your training.
I actually made the same selection for some of the same reasons you said, like if you have the good partner and things like that. And hey, also, if this fighter that you're banking on happens to be a narcissist, they're only going to care about themselves anyway. So the kid won't be a distraction. But I did say that to me, the worst one of those three would be the movie. And the reason is because unlike the kid where, you know, you've got hopefully a partner to help, and unlike the rap album, which you probably sunk your money into, and that probably wasn't a real smart business decision, but at the same time, you're the only one who's going to lose financially on it. The movie, you're working for another big multi-million-dollar production. So it's almost kind of like you're working with another promoter simultaneously. And that movie company may have hired you because of who you are and your name and everything, but they also don't really care how camp is going. They are more concerned with, hey, I've got a crew of 100 people here and we can't hold up filming. I'm sorry, you're, you know, going to be cut and wait in 2 weeks, but I need you to do your final scenes here. You know, I just think that that's got to have more pressure on it than anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you.
All right. Well, I don't know if either one of these guys are going to be making movies anytime soon, but the feature bout was the third in this title fight triple header for the men's bantamweight title. Petr Yan taking on Aljamain Sterling, a guy who's long been a contender for that title, and Aljo finally got his shot. The fight ended in a very controversial manner as Petr Yan landed a blatantly illegal knee on Sterling at 4 minutes and 29 seconds into round 4. Before we talk about that knee, let me ask you how you thought the fight was going up to that point.
I actually thought Aljamain was doing a very good job. I think his pace and being orthodox was, you know, I think it was giving Petr Yan a hard time to begin with. But then as the fight was going on, you know, Yan was just landing the harder strikes. You know, even the takedowns, some of them were painful, you know, and hurting. So, you know, had the fight ended at that moment, you know, I had Yan winning the fight. And it only looked like it was going to get worse because, you know, Aljamain's, you know, his tempo was obviously, you know, drastically dropping down because, you know, he couldn't keep that intensity up for 25 minutes. He did a phenomenal job of keeping it up for, you know, 20, you know, for about 15, and then it started dropping, you know, 10, and then, you know, obviously the output from taking shots and being countered and being, you know, dropped on his head a couple times, you know, takes it out of you. But he was biting down his mouthpiece and fighting hard. I was very impressed with him. I thought he made a good showing of himself. He wasn't going to win the fight. You know, he never landed anything of significance besides that first knee in the first round that made me think that he was going to be able to turn that around on Yan. And I just thought it was very disappointing into the fight that, you know, Yan, you know, I don't get why, you know, there's such a clear cut. The guy's on one knee on the ground, you know, to throw the knee like he did. And then for anybody at home that was sitting there, because, you know, I was there in a group of people, you know, and people, oh, you know, just get up. And I'm like, well, Sterling was really put in a bad position, right? Because, yeah, he probably could have got up and could have fought. And maybe he melted a little bit, you know. But, I mean, the knee did take something out of him, and it was an illegal knee. So, like, how do you give that back to him so he has a chance of maybe continuing on in the fight? Mm-hmm. That's the part that, like, you know, that makes it. This is what makes it just a shitty situation because, you know, yeah, deducting a point could, you know, help, you know, maybe motivate him to want to get back in there. That's something, you know, to equal it back out that he was fouled. But now, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Yan jumps on him and then knocks him out, you know. So it really just is you know, an unfortunate situation, especially when titles change hands that way. You know, I was just as disappointed as everybody else at home. And I guess I was just more or less just, you know, wondering why, you know, Yan with all his experience would have made that mistake in the fight, especially with he was in control. He was winning.
Yes. Yeah.
It wasn't like he needed to. He wasn't rocked. He wasn't gassed. he wasn't flustered where he was fighting from behind and had to make something happen. He was in a really, he had that thing flipped in cruise control, was landing hard shots. I mean, Sterling was starting to turn his back. I mean, not just to throw a spinning attack, but to get away from pain. And all the takedowns and slams and position. It was all in Peter Yan's favor. And it looked like he was gassed out, making a mental error. I don't understand why it happened.
Yeah, I don't either. I just, to go back to the beginning, to share my thoughts. I thought Aljo was doing a much more competitive job than it seemed like the commentators were conveying. I thought what penalized him unfairly was his body language. It just because you're loose, or if you want to use the word, maybe it's coming across a little sloppy or frenetic. I think that's the right word. You credited his pace, and the commentators did mention that too. And I think he deserved credit for the pace, but it didn't look technical. He was kind of flailing about. And I think sometimes that happens when the opposition does look particularly technical. And Petr Yan does. Like, his stance is very, hands are always high, and he's very precise, right? And so that a lot of times, I think when you're compared to that, you can look even more loose. But that doesn't mean you're not advancing. That doesn't mean you're not putting forth effort. That doesn't mean what you're doing is not working to some degree. So I wasn't so surprised when they read the cards and Aljo was even still up on one of the cards. They didn't read them, but when they shared what the cards were. That being said, yeah, I think it was Jan's fight to lose, certainly at the point where the illegal knee happened. Now, as far as the knee goes, to me, what made it so incredibly flagrant, I mean, to the point that I don't think even taking 2 points away would have even the field again after it happened, was it's not like, sometimes you see these knees happen in a scramble where, okay, he was down one knee, but he was about to come back up, or the fighter was throwing a knee to the chest and the fighter moved, and all of a sudden, he went down, he went up, the head went where he thought the knee was going to the chest, something like that. It was so not that. It looked like one of those professional wrestling moves where the guy's got the guy and he's showing the fist to the crowd. Should I do it? Should I hit him? Should I hit him? The crowd, and he's just like a sitting duck right there. Because there was that moment of calculation. And even if his corner had said, throw it, I mean, come on, you're aware this is not legal. I mean, I would think I think Jan said in the post-fight press conference that he didn't really understand what his corner was saying. Maybe that's the case, but just because I heard, I'd like to think my first thought, even being in the middle of an adrenaline-filled fight like that, if that opponent is clearly on his knees and somebody yells out from my corner, okay, knee him in the head, I'd like to think I'd still have the wherewithal to go, oh, I don't think so. No, I won't do that. Anyway, it cost him. I mean, he seemed like he was, I saw he posted an apology about it on Twitter and was somewhat contrite in the post-fight press conference, but I don't know, man. There was also the thing where he's like holding his hand up when they're going to announce the finish of the fight. It's like, put your hand down. Like, the major mistake was made here. Like, just hang your head, apologize, and say, can we just do this over again? Because, you said it. It's like you can't give the faculties back to the fighter. And it'd be like it
just mars it no matter what, because that fight continues on.
Yeah.
Is that not going to be a factor we're going to talk about? Like, well, what would have happened if he didn't get the knee?
Yep. Yep, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's like you can't sober up in an instant. You know what I mean? You can't just be drunk and then be like, okay, we deducted in 2 points. Now be sober again. It doesn't work that way.
One thing I wish we could change in the rule system, though, is I don't think it's the fighter's decision to continue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're looking at the guy and going, hey, are you cool? Of course he's going to say he's cool. You know what I mean? Like, you know, what fighter's not going to say, no, you know what? Nah, I'm going to go ahead and take the win here. I think this should be the head cornerman's job. He should look and assess his fighter. Allow, you know, if I'm cornering Bella, let me walk in the cage with the doctor, look at my fighter in the eyes, ask them what I think, and then I can make the decision. And that way it's on the corner. It takes pressure off the fighter of making a decision of going on when maybe they shouldn't, and we can save them from being too tough for their own good. And it puts pressure on the cornerman. And then that's what the corners are there for, to take, you know, any of the heat from the fighter.
Yeah, I agree. Because you know, the UFC now has that policy, and there are some exceptions made sometimes, but there's a basic policy that they're not interviewing fighters after they've been KO'd, you know, to the point of possibly having a concussion and things like that. So if they're not letting the fighter make that decision,
right,
why on earth let them make the decision that affects their health more? The other one's just to kind of keep them from being a little embarrassed if they don't realize exactly where they are.
Yeah, I think it should be the referee, doctor, head cornerman, the three of them. Ultimately, you know, on the advice from the referee and from the doctor, the head cornerman can, you know, they evaluate the fighter, they make the decision.
Yeah, completely agreed. Elsewhere on this card, I'm just going to kind of bounce around for a minute and, you know, mention anything that interests you. I thought it was also a great night for rising stars, like for guys who have very promising futures or are right now really kind of touted as future contenders or maybe contenders very soon. Guys like Islam Makhachev, who totally steamrolled Drew Dober. I didn't think that was going to, I mean, that wasn't a giving fight. I mean, Drew Dober has been a very impressive fighter in the UFC, but Makhachev looked every bit like he's worthy of the hype that he's gotten for the future of the lightweight division. I must admit, the one fight I missed, unfortunately, I got to go back and look at this, but I missed the opening of the main card. I missed Rakic and Santos. Anything you can tell me about that? I mean, it was a unanimous decision for Rakic, but any thoughts?
No, I was on the road coming back from Arizona. Bella and Cage were wrestling, so
there you go.
I was wrestling coach, dad, and then going being spectator.
You and me both. All right. Dominic Cruz defeats Casey Kenny. Nice to see Cruz back. It's always nice to see Cruz back. I feel like we've welcomed it back more times than I can count. But, you know, here's a guy who is he's turning 36 next week, I believe. And, you know, you always say the power is the last thing to go. But when you talk about speed and the fact that Dominic Cruz, I've always thought, has unparalleled footwork. I mean, his movement has been so much a key part of his success. It hadn't lost a step. I mean, literally. I mean, I'm not. I mean, literally hasn't lost a step. He looked every bit as spry as he always has in there. Kyler Phillips defeated Song Yadong. A lot of credit to Phillips there because Yadong was not good. In fact, that was a tough fight for me to pick, that particular one. Tough night for Joe Benavidez. Oscar Oskarov really dominated Joe Benavidez in a unanimous decision, 30-27 on two of the cards and 30-26 on the other. You know, these guys were 2 and 3, I guess, contenders fighting for the flyweight title. Isn't it such a tough spot for Joe Benavidez to be in? I mean, here's a guy who's, you know, of course, he had to fight the first couple of years of his career, more than the first couple, without a true division. Flyweight comes along. I mean, certainly he's had a great career, but has gotten so close to the title, has fought for it multiple times, and has just never quite been able to get there. And then here you have that weird glass ceiling situation again, where, you know, you're sitting at number 2, you're sitting at number 3. but headlines are already saying, well, now that title shots are done, he's he's got to figure out where he's at in the pecking order. And it sounds crazy to say, but okay, yeah. I mean, if you've lost convincingly, especially multiple times to a sitting champion, and if that champion isn't going anywhere, it's going to be very difficult to, make a third fight with somebody that's already defeated you. I don't know. I've seen it happen before. I mean, we saw it happen famously, I think, with Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey, for as long as Ronda was still fighting. But I don't know that I've seen it happen multiple times. Benavidez went through this with Demetrius Johnson when he was the champion. Joe Benavidez's worst sin is that he's an incredible fighter who has lost some championship fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to how good he is. He's been in the conversation now, at the top of the food chain for 10 years. But yeah, just and then also too, just I'm sure for him, disappointing that just he's always just one step away from that breakthrough.
Also on the early prelims, I don't know if you got a chance to see this or not. Sean Brady defeated Jake Matthews, submission arm triangle choke, round 3, but it was dominance from top to bottom. And the other than getting to see a hot prospect in Sean Brady defeat a tough out like Jake Matthews, it did occur to me there was something that happened in that fight that wasn't particularly unusual, I guess. We do see it happen in fights, but I was thinking, I'm going to mental note, this is going to be good for the podcast conversation with Frank. There was that moment in the fight, you've seen it happen so many times, where Matthews had Brady's neck, but Brady's on the wrong side for the guillotine. It was one of those situations where you've got the neck wrap, but all you're really doing is holding the guy down on top of you. And listen, I've certainly been coached not to do it many times. I mean, it's one of those things you still hear in class where you're like, okay, all you're doing is you're just holding your opponent down on top of you. You don't have what you think you have. And I know that Jake Matthews is smart enough to know that too, but it also does seem to be, even at the top levels of the profession, just an instinct sometimes, because a neck is a neck. It's kind of like if there was ever a time that you're holding $100 in your hand, but it's not worth $100. It's so hard to just go, this is $100 bill. And you're like, yeah, but in this particular instance, it's worthless. I know every other scenario it's valuable, because how can you go wrong with a neck? A naked neck in an MMA fight, but not in this scenario. Can you think of, and I know I can tell from the expression on your face, and people who are watching our YouTube channel or Phone Booth Fighting YouTube channel are seeing it as well. You know what I'm talking about. Are there other scenarios that come to your mind, Frank? This is where I'm going with this, where in certain instances of MMA, yeah, I know you've got an arm. Yeah, I know you've got a neck. Yeah, I know you've got a leg or a back, whatever. But in this instance, no good.
Well, I mean, you see people do it from side control or half guard on the bottom. They wrap over the person's underhook. It really is doing.
Oh, right. Over. Like they go over their. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, they got the under and then they come over the top, because that's another way of just holding the opponent down, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. And really, I mean, as far as stalling, I guess it can work a little bit, just like holding somene's head if you miss a guillotine. Mm-hmm. But as far as productivity, it just wears your arm out. A frame would be much better to establish, because then you can get pressure off, maybe dig an underhook. But you can't frame when you're wrapping someone's arm. So that's sometimes frustrating that, even myself sometimes in fights, you first hit the ground, you'll just wrap that arm because it's an instinct not to get hit. So you hold on, whereas you realize, if I actually let go and use my arm, I can be offensive from here and not be just defensive.
Well, and you're typically coached there too to not only let go of that overhook, but also to come in tight and then like windshield wiper underneath, right? Which to me is doubly counterintuitive, because not only am I letting go of what I got, but you're asking me to tuck my arm in to, there's this person on top of me and I've already got one arm trapped here. You're saying bring the other one in and coming in tight, I mean, it just goes to show you the science of grappling, because it doesn't matter. I mean, what I'm describing is something, white belts are hearing today in class. And yet it's also something that somebody who fought at UFC 259, was just having to probably fight his own instincts. Now, granted, he was fighting a guy who was just creating all kinds of problems for him. But it just goes to show you, I think, that no matter what level you get to, there's still a battle that goes on with yourself and your just human instincts,
Absolutely. All the time.
Yeah. Top to bottom, I thought a really good card. And, credit to the UFC for being able to do this in this type of environment. I don't know if you saw any of the lead up to the fight, but I like the little embedded videos or anything like that. But what it appears they're doing is now they're just taking over one of those. I don't know if it's like an extended stay hotel, one of those businessman type hotels where it's got the little kitchenette and, like where a businessman's going to stay there for a couple of weeks. It's no longer, they're not putting them up in the big casino. They're just taking over one of those things because they can probably just have the whole hotel to themselves and just kind of create that negative COVID testing bubble. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's do this. We're going to wrap up this recap of UFC 259. We'll remind everybody to check out the promo codes at phoneboothfighting.com. For more on that, Frank can take it from here. He'll tell you a little bit about American Shaman, a big sponsor of not only him, but now the second generation of fighting mirrors. Right, Frank?
Yeah, just you can see the products that I like that I use every day. My daughter also, and actually all the kids. MirAmericanShaman.com. Click on it. It's really easy to go through. A lot of stuff is just one click, one stop, and a quick description of what the different products do, and they'll help you out with your everyday life.
All right, and
also, I just let everybody know I will be in. I'll post it up on my social media to tell you exactly where I'm at, because right now it's Sunday morning and I've been doing nothing but taking naps, trying to recover. But I'll be actually in Texas this Saturday and Sunday.
I saw that actually. I think it's Dallas, right, or Fort Worth, or in my hometown area there. Yeah, excellent. So that's coming up this weekend, and of course the date is set for Frank's next fight, but his first fight as a professional boxer. He's going to be taking on former world champ Antonio Tarver. It's April. Is it 17th? What's the date on that?
April 17th.
Okay. We do have a location. Did you say Atlanta?
Yep.
Okay, Atlanta, Georgia. And then it's part of the Triller promotion, so it's going to be available on pay-per-view. We'll get everybody up to speed on the details on that. Do you know who is on this undercard of this thing? Do you know some of the other fights?
I'm having a meeting with them tomorrow, so I'll have more information. So next time we do sit down on the podcast, I'll answer more questions.
Okay.
More information. I just know that it's obviously, Ben Askren and Paul are the main card.
Yes. You know what this is going to force me to do, don't you, Frank? I'm mad at you about it. I'm going to have to figure out who this Paul person is and what they do for a living. There's two of them. Is this one going to be
Logan and Jake, right?
Yeah. Which one is this one going to be? Do you know who's fighting Ben? You don't know either, do you? I don't know. What I know is they're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Frank, we're on YouTube right now. I think he has a few more followers than we do, but I swear I don't. How do we not know this? You're younger than me, but yet you're too old to understand it as well. Do your kids know who this person is?
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. Okay. But he's not a singer.
From what I understand, they start out on Vine, because it's been explained to me because I've asked this question. They made content on there.
Yeah.
And basically just, I don't know. Actually, Dylan Best, Nick Best's son, he watches them on YouTube. He just says, it's just interesting. I'm like, really? Like, what do they do? He's like, they do everything. They're interesting and just interesting to watch. He's like, I just watch the guy all day. I'm all, huh. So the guy's just interesting, I guess.
Can you imagine? I mean, you've been a professional fighter for about half your life, right? I mean, just right about. I'm sure you thought about this as your life progressed, probably went from, man, am I going to get to do this more than once, to, am I going to actually have a career at this, to, hey, I think I'm going to get a title shot, to, hey, look at, this, all the way through all the levels and all the thoughts. But did you ever have the thought in your mind that before you retired, you would be on a fight card a very high profile pay-per-view fight card, and one of the main fights would involve someone where you had to go to your children and say, who is this person? and they could explain it. They could totally explain it to you. All right. Well, I'm intrigued now. I guess I'll understand, or I'll take my best shot at trying to figure out who this person is. And then I guess we have to figure out if he's going to have a shot at beating Ben Askren. I mean, the first thought would be no, but I don't know. I mean, he's picking somebody who's not a striker for a reason, I'm sure. So anyway, we can get into that as the fight gets closer. All right, Frank. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday morning, and that goes the same for all of you Phone Booth Fighting listeners. Please tell a friend about the podcast. Tell them to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Phone Booth Fighting, if they haven't already, or you haven't already. And same the audio version. You can get that wherever podcasts are available. Thanks for checking us out, and Frank and I will see you right back here next time on Phone Booth Fighting.